Lobsters. A local guy, $35 a pound.
Okay.
Didn't realize I had muted myself. Well, it is 6:30 and we have all members of the board present. So I think we'll get in. We're recording and posted live on YouTube. Wow.
Don't you just love it when a plan comes together?
Sorry, Betty, I could barely hear you.
Don't you just love it when a plan comes together?
I think I heard something about a plan comes together.
Yeah, don't you just love it when a plan comes together?
Okay, yes. Agreed. Well, seeing as we planned this a month ago. Let me get my handy dandy statement. Okay. I will call the May 13th, 2021 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting to order at 6:31. As chair of the Northwood, move this, look into the camera. As chair of the Northwood Planning Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. I'd ask now, if you are not a member of the board, please mute yourself or your microphone. And we'll do a roll call of members present, please. Chair Bob Strobel.
Vice Chair Lee Baldwin.
Betty Smith?
Al Craig. Sorry.
Vandiver.
Dwayne Curry.
Okay. And for RSA 91A, please state your name again if you have, and who is with you if someone else is in the room with you. If not, just you can remain silent. Go ahead, Al.
My wife is here with me.
Okay. Okay. I think that'll cover 91A. Just a note for members of the public or abutters who are here. We had 2 withdrawals of cases. Fatherland Family Trust
was not on tonight's agenda, I don't believe. But
okay, I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure if they had been withdrawn from the agenda because they were the cases were withdrawn.
No, they're next.
No, they were intended to be next time,
Okay.
and they will be. They are planning to attend for a preliminary consultation.
Okay.
Just level discussion, so that will need to remain high level 30,000-foot view. But they have officially withdrawn the application that's before the board, so there will be no public hearing related to that case that night.
Okay. So do we have any drawn cases for tonight then?
We do. KRJ Realty or KRJ Finance has withdrawn.
Okay.
So we will not be bringing that case up.
That is, for anyone who doesn't recognize it, that is case 21-12, which is Princess Pine Road in Stratford. So that case has been withdrawn, so we will not be hearing it tonight. So you do not need to stick around for that meeting or for that hearing if you don't want to. Okay. We have minutes of April 29th to cover. If somebody wanted to make a motion to that effect.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Baldwin, second by Mr. Jandeber, and note that
That was Betty.
that was Betty. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we all sound the same.
Over
Apparently.
Zoom, you sound very similar. And for the record, we have voting designation of all members present. So we have a motion by Betty Smith, second by Mr. Jandeber for the minutes of April 29th. Discussion.
I have
Go ahead.
in page 5, actually 2 typos in line 6. Will Tis, I don't know what that is, so it should be this, I'm sure. Property to the children, or they kind of sell it. And then further across the line, if that's the case, I think it's in 20 years, not 20 years.
Okay.
That's it.
On line 8, you
Sorry,
said.
no, line 6. Under
Oh,
Ralph
yes,
Blackie,
sorry.
line 6, Will TIS. I
Yes.
think it's this property. Need to put an
Yes.
H in there.
Correct.
Further over in that same line, if that's the case,
Oh,
in 20 years.
Yep.
And that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'm assuming second and motion makers are willing to amend their motion to minutes as amended.
As amended.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Susan could do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
My last piece, take it away when you go.
First up tonight is case 21-8, Paula Photo. And do we have a representative or the applicant with us? Does not look like it, but that shouldn't be not required. I believe we received from through email a septic letter.
Times, apparently.
Pardon
Apparently I
Times
sent it 3 times. I didn't mean
Oh.
to.
me? Hey, that's okay. At least we know we got it then. We had the septic letter. We had I think something else on that. I think that was the main thing. The site plan.
Yes.
Did everybody on the board have a chance to look at that?
Yep.
And staff, for that matter.
I did not.
Okay.
I have a question on the letters. Are they all the same?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sometimes different edits come out, and one of them was in Word, so I wasn't sure if there was,
Well,
or something like that.
I had them sent to me. So I thought they were different. Sorry.
Well, that's why I'm asking. Have we?
No, they're all, I think it's the same letter.
Yeah, so I saw
Yeah.
it. I looked at 2 of them. They were the same letter. Just one was
Yeah.
in Word and one was in PDF.
Yeah, and Paula just joined, so
Oh, she did. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Two of them
Okay.
were the same.
Pardon me?
2 of them were the same with the same letterhead, and there was one same letter, different letterhead. So
Okay,
that was the 3.
that's fine. We're deal more with the content than whether it's on the same letterhead or not. So, okay, so we have a letter of septic stating that the septic is adequate for the new use. We had a letter or a scan of the hand-drawn site plan. And I'm not finding the date on when that was, but I knew I saw it, and it looked, from my individual perspective, it looked fine for my needs. Anybody want to talk about the adequacy of the site plan that was given?
Oh, hold on. I'm so sorry. My house is crazy right now.
That's okay. No, not, that was not intended as a complaint, Ms. Fateau. We have, except for, especially for minimal impacts, we accept hand-drawn site plans pretty much as long as they meet certain requirements.
All set.
Okay, anybody have any questions, comments on the site plan? Okay, is there anything else outstanding on this application that you know of, James or town staff?
I think that the septic letter meets my expectations. It's actually one of the, in my opinion, best laid out and most concise letters that we typically receive for that request. So yeah, I think that is fine. I am not aware, which is not to say that it hasn't been submitted to Linda or Susan, that we've gotten confirmation from District 6 about the driveway, but I have no problem with requiring that as a condition of approval, and getting that in before Bob signs the plan. So if we don't have that tonight, I have no objection to moving forward. The letter from the licensed septic designer we have, and we need to make sure that we have 3 copies of the final plan for Bob to sign. And then prior to occupancy, Bob just needs to sign off on the plans. So the only other thing that I'll note, I believe, since we had a very crowded agenda last night or last meeting, that we have not acted in any meaningful capacity on any of these applications. So if we could have a procedural vote regarding regional impact tonight, I would appreciate it. I have absolutely no concerns about this application being a development of regional impact, and recommend that the board make a motion of no regional impact.
Okay, thank you.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Betty Smith, second by Ms. Baldwin, to find no regional impact on case 21-8. Discussion? Hearing none, Susan, can do a roll call vote, please.
Wayne,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Joe,
Did you say Joe?
Yep.
Yes.
Sounds like Joe? Okay. Yes.
Al,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes, and how about Dwayne?
She called me already. Yes.
I thought I
Okay,
started with
sorry.
you. Okay.
I was, just wanted to double check. Okay, so no regional impact. I think we've addressed everything in the planner's report.
So,
So,
Mr. Chair, to
check.
clarify, I believe we are down to 3 conditions. So prior to the signing of plans, provide written confirmation from NHDOT District 6, either confirming the existing driveway design is adequate or providing a new DOT driveway permit. Number 2, provide 3 paper copies of the final plan for signature. Prior to occupancy. Number 3, the plan shall be signed by the chair indicating final approval of the planning board.
Okay. And Ms. Foto,
Motion
you
to
are,
approve with said conditions.
okay,
Second.
Yeah, it's,
okay. Motion by Mr. Jandeber, second by Ms. Baldwin, because I heard the both of you, and I'll rotate between the two of you. Ms. Foto, you're aware of and understand the requirements or the conditions.
Just so I'm sorry, just so I make sure I'm right. So the driveway permit, which I did get, so I'll resend that. Then I had to get 3 copies of, what was it?
As long as we have 3 copies of, hard copies of the final plan in the office that Bob can come in and sign.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, what was the third one?
Third one is
The third one is just prior to occupancy, the plan shall be signed by the chair indicating final approval of the planning board. I'm including that as a condition more regularly now, more as an FYI to applicants that the plan needs to be signed before you can operate.
And usually
Yep.
what happens is that I get noticed or emailed that plans are ready to sign, and I'm usually in within typically 48 hours to sign them, and then you'll get notice of decision. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Al,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Good.
You are all set.
All right. Thank
So
you guys very, very much.
Well,
Much
just send-
appreciated.
Send over to town staff the letter from District 6
Yep.
and 3 copies of your plan, and I'll probably get them back to you within a couple days after that, if not sooner.
Okay. Awesome. Very much appreciated. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Next up is case 21-10, Connections Peer Support Center.
I believe it's 21-9. Are we right on the number?
I believe the agenda today is correct.
Okay, I just was not sure.
That's 2110 is what I put on my original staff report.
Okay.
And that's more for us.
We know who you are and
Okay.
which the application that you're planning.
I'm here as counsel along with the executive director, Greg Birdwood, as well as the property owner and some other board members who are just visiting with us. Pleasure to
Okay.
be here.
Welcome all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to recuse myself here.
Okay. So voting designation will be all members present, or well, Ms. Baldwin has recused herself, so it'll be the remaining members.
It says iPhone.
Yes, we have someone who just
I-
called in.
I don't want to mute them because it's the last time I did that.
Right, exactly. I was just gonna say. Well, we'll just watch them
Okay.
for noise if need be. Off the bat, I would entertain a motion for, well, I'm assuming, James, that 2110 is not regional impact.
Likewise, I don't think that any of these constitute a regional impact under the terms of that RSA. So I would recommend that this one and the next case both be found to have no potential for regional impact.
Okay.
So moved.
I guess I'm getting predictable in my old
Second.
age.
I'll flip you for it.
Okay, we'll give the motion to Mr. McCaffrey and the second to Ms. Smith, Betty Smith. Discussion on having no regional impact for 2110. Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Tim,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
Yep.
Hal,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, so no regional impact. Okay, and we got into some discussion last time. So why don't we do an update on anything that has changed between now and the last time? And
Nothing has changed.
If nothing has changed, that's fine. That's what I like to hear. But I always like to double check. Okay. I need to find that report. Second. So we received a letter from DOT. Let me pull it up here.
There was also an abutter comment that she had asked to have it read into the meeting last time, but
Yes.
from Kate McNally.
Thank you.
Do you have that?
Let me pull that up. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's a combination of two.
Yes, that's why I
cases.
didn't find it. So, okay. Yes. I'll read that in once we get into public comment. But thank you for calling my attention to that. Now I gotta find it again. Okay. So we have a letter from DOT on the driveway entrance for this application, for this site. We had another letter. So those were the two communications that I recall receiving. What else do we have outstanding, James? Because I buried my staff report and closed it somewhere, unfortunately.
Sorry,
I
I'm still
believe,
muted.
quite frankly, James?
Sorry, I was still muted. So would the person on the iPhone mind muting yourself?
Yep, please. Thank you.
The applicant has provided a septic letter as part of the original packet submission. So yeah, I would leave it to the board to determine whether that one meets your needs. I believe we had the confirmation from NHDOT regarding the driveways.
Yep.
So that should take care of, yeah, that should take care of condition number 1. So all we would have remaining for conditions of approval would be, prior to the signing of plans, deliver 3 copies of the plan signed by the applicant to the town for signature. Number 2, prior to occupancy, the plan shall be signed by the chair indicating final approval of the planning board. Otherwise, I'm satisfied with the plan design. I believe we discussed parking last time. I don't have a particular concern regarding parking. The main reason why I brought it up for discussion in my staff report was more because this doesn't have a direct parallel to any of those listed uses. But I think regardless of whether you are applying the multifamily standard that I don't believe is the most appropriate one, or the bed and breakfast / elderly housing standard that I think fits this use a little bit better, given how the parking and your traffic is likely to occur. I believe they're providing adequate basis for those standards. So.
And I seem to recall on the septic that, I need to find my notes here.
The septic is a little bit less explicit than the one that we just saw. It discusses the total approximate gallons per day that the septic was approved for, but it doesn't give, if I recall correctly, an estimated amount of usage for this site.
That's the kind of thing I was looking for, but
Right, I don't believe it has an exact, we expect 1,000 gallons per day for this use, and it can accommodate 1,200 or anything like that. But I believe it was originally installed as a residential septic system, and the applicant can confirm that if they recall that.
Yeah, the septic letter, the supplemental septic letter, which we obtained from Septic Designs of New Hampshire, which we provided, which unfortunately was undated, so I can only refer to it as that. The right side says 2021-0429, which I think is April 29, 2021. Notes that the state DES, we presume the subsurface loading people bureau, talk about 150 gallons per day per bedroom.
Right.
We have three people living there max, and a fourth person who would stay overnight, a staff member. That would be 4 bedrooms is 600 gallons per day. And he notices that those calculations include 2 people per bedroom. That would be 8 people in the house, while we only have 4. Although there occasionally someone else shows up. The septic person, Mike Denner, points out that if there is going to be 1 to 3 people living there full time, an additional people, and maybe another person, that'd be 5 people, and that this septic can handle 5 people in that residential setting. They didn't know the exact loading, but that was provided in another document which we attached to the plan. I could go address that if you like. And that showed, I think, 15.
Your numbers confirm with my numbers of 150
Right.
gallons per day.
Right, and then
Per bedroom.
1,500 gallons per day was the number that they came up with in the septic loading, or I guess septic capacity, in the document attached to our application.
Right.
There's more than adequate septic to handle it.
I don't disagree with you at all in that. It was more, I wanted to get into the record an idea of the estimated load rather than the capacity.
I think that letter that we submitted, I think addresses that issue pretty well.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So what I'll do at this point in time is I will open public comment on this case. First off, I have a letter to read received on this application from Dan and Kate McNally, dated April 20th, 2021. Dear Chairman Strobel and Planning Board members, I will skip the case that is no longer applicable, but applies to this one. Although not abutters to the property, we are long-term residents of the area. Again, as with Cerebral Development's proposal, we have reservations about adding any additional entrance egress to Route 4, particularly at that location. At that location where people will potentially be crossing several lanes of traffic and competing with these, making turns for Hannaford's and Irving. Safe access already exists with parking via Route 202 and Church Street and should remain as it is. Church Street's intersection with Route 4 was removed by the state as being too dangerous, so it would seem adding a driveway and even closer to the intersection would present the same dangers. Sincerely, Dan and Kate McNally. Okay. At this time, if you would like to speak on this application, I will give preference first up to abutters. You need to unmute yourself and get my attention either by vocal or preferably turning on your video and raising your hand.
Go away.
Okay. We have Mark. Could you tell us your last name, please?
Sure. Mark Farrell, 167 First New Hampshire Turnpike.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple of questions last meeting, and they were answered. I just had the same question that was just asked by the McNallys. and you know, I would agree. I can hardly get out of my driveway during times of the day, so I can't imagine it being a good idea. Anyways, my questions the last time were answered satisfactorily. However, I just want to say I'm not in favor of this. I find it hard to believe you buy a house for $300,000 to $400,000 and you have 3 residents, and you know, Medicare, who plays about 53 cents on the dollar. The math isn't working out for me, that there's only going to be 3 people. I just have a hard time buying it. And, you know, having served on a trustee at a local hospital and on, you know, nonprofits, math's not adding up. But, you know, just want to go on record as saying I'm not in favor of this proposal. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Others who would like to speak on this application? Going once?
Perhaps, would you care for us to address those points?
You don't have to. It's
Okay.
not a requirement. The abutters or public comments are mainly for the board's consideration. If you would like to, you're welcome to do so, but
No,
why don't we
please.
wait till after the close of public comment?
Okay, that's perfect.
Sure. Which I don't think is going to be very long. Okay, we have others who would like to speak on this application. Just preferably turn your video on and raise your hand if you would. Okay. Going twice, going thrice. I will close public comment on case 21-10 Connections Peer Support Center. Okay. Mr. Levine, if you would like to respond, you're welcome to do so at this time.
Mark Farrell, we understand his concern that this is going to turn into a wholesale operation, and I gather his concerns about the math. Just to put him at ease, he's our neighbor, and we live very close to him, and we want to have good relations with everyone in town and our neighbors. So taking this opportunity would be, I think, helpful to the board and helpful to him, as well as the McNallys. The McNallys have been around here for a while and are very involved in the community, and they need an explanation as well. We understand first that there is already a driveway on Route 4 that's in existence and is used. The planner suggested, James suggested, that we get either another permit from the DOT or a letter saying that we don't need another permit. My review of the law is we've made no change, so we don't need a permit. I spoke with a fellow over at DOT. He said, yeah, that's true, but why don't we just give you a permit? We'll go check it out, and if one's warranted, which I think it would be, we'll issue one, and he did. That's more a state concern, which takes into consideration all those things. How close the driveway is to the intersection of 202, traffic, and all those other things, the class road that it is, the construction of the road, lots of factors under the regs. And they've deemed it to be not an issue. The traffic that will be coming in will be extraordinarily limited. It is a 4-bedroom house with 3 guests. Most of the time, they won't be traveling in and out of that driveway going anywhere. Yes, they can use the Church Street exit, and most people do. That's where generally the parking is. So we're not talking about a lot of Route 4 access anyway. Even if everybody here used Route 4, we're not talking a lot of in and out at all. I know that Mr. Farrell's concerned that this so-called 3-bedroom going to be with a 4th staff member living there will turn into a 20-bedroom, multi-story parking lot and high rise. But before there's any change in the use, it would be necessary for us to come back here anyway. So there's always a legal stopgap that he would be aware of were that to happen. Just to be really clear, we have no plan and never had a plan to expand it beyond 3. There's all sorts of licensure requirements and lots of other things that are necessary from the state. We're just not that kind of organization. We're not a multi-use or multi-resident kind of facility. We're a small facility with a very modest goal. We don't have an extravagant goal at all. We're small. We don't rely on Medicaid. We rely on direct state funding from the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically for this and other projects that we have. They believe that this funding is far less expensive than using Medicaid's spending, which comes from the state. So quite frankly, it's less expensive doing this than using Medicaid, which is why it's funded, why the state is happy to do it. They comply with all sorts of federal requirements by having us do this. So that's what I'm trying to address Mr. Farrell, to say, look, we're not going to get bigger. It's just not in the cards. And there is an economic incentive for us to continue to do exactly this. You won't see a lot of traffic going in, going out, will mostly be very invisible. It's empty now, virtually, the property. It will be just the same way. You won't see us ever. We're invisible. That's what we are. We're small. It's almost the same as a house. A couple of people live in there that don't do much. That's all I have, but thank you. Sorry to take so long.
That's okay. That's what I have time for.
And Mr. Chairman and members of the council, I wonder if it might be helpful. We actually have Ayla Kendall here this evening as well. She's with the Department of Health and Human Services, and she oversees the contract that we have that has very specific and strict parameters in terms of what the purpose of this program is and how many people we can serve. Let's see. Yeah, there she is. Hi, Ayla. So Ayla, I wonder if you might speak to that a little bit.
Well, let me interrupt because it's sort of my meeting.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Members of the board, would you like to hear from DHHS?
I don't mind.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sounds like it might be a good idea.
Okay.
Information is always good.
Certainly. Ms. Kendall, why don't you unmute yourself and go ahead.
Let's go.
Hi, folks. Yes, as Greg said, my name is Ayla Kendall. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services. The Bureau of Mental Health Services specifically is where the contracts are held. And essentially, I am the contract administrator at the Bureau. Basically, what they've already said is the recap. They are held to pretty tight contractual guidelines as far as the number, the capacity, the perimeters of the program. We're obviously very vested in this program. It helps a lot of people. And as Seth had pointed out, is far less costly than alternative treatment avenues. So I just come in support of this program, just to let you all know that, we do have a lot of monitoring and guidelines and quality assurance in place so that we can ensure that the program is utilized the way that we intend it to, and to help people in the community.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Hal, go ahead.
I guess the question's for you, Bob.
That's not what I expected.
Yeah, well.
That's okay.
How do we, this type of thing has come up, not just on this application, but others, where we're trying to understand the capacity, the number, and things like that. And I'll admit, it's easy for us to get confused. It's easy for staff to miss something. what's the basis or what can we do to document this so it's very clear in terms of what is actually approved, so that we can maybe assure Mark and others that it's not going to change. And Kayla or Ayla, I understand that you have a contract with them, but there could be successor organizations and follow-on type things. So from my perspective, I'm a big proponent of documenting what we all agree to and then confirming that that's indeed what's happening. So I can, in the case of the elderly housing, I don't know if it's the right thing, but one of the things I proposed was that the elderly housing submit to the town a report each year. So, I guess the question for you, Bob, is I'm not sure what we're allowed to include or have as reporting requirements or what makes sense. Certainly a board discussion. But I think that's the main thing that I'm looking for is how do we make sure that when people ask the question, what's permitted there, that we can easily and readily find that and can keep confirming that.
Mr. Chair, I can provide a little context and then I have a suggestion.
Sure, go ahead.
If you like.
Go
ahead. When an application is before you, you are evaluating the application based on what the applicant is stating on the record that they intend to do. So we will have, ad infinitum, a record of the minutes where the applicant is here saying they will have 3 residents and 1 overnight staff person. So they have stated that, they've been consistent about that. If they take a 4th resident, they are in violation of their site plan, and that's an enforcement mechanism. We will also have the notice of decision on file, and the notice of decision fairly typically pulls the agenda heading that we've noticed and we've had on the agenda into the text of that document, and that's what remains as a record of what is permitted. Our agenda heading for this currently already has some similar information about the maximum stay that the applicant has represented. If there are concerns about whether we're going to remember what exactly is the number, I would suggest that we simply add into that agenda heading where it states Connections Pierce report, applicant is requesting a minimal impact review, applicant is proposing a short-term residential program for guests who are experiencing mental health challenges. I would suggest that we say for up to 3 guests at any given time.
Just a heads up, if I could interrupt, in our proposal, we say applicants, a nonprofit proposes the step up, step down program, short-term residential program for guests with no more than 3 guests. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking for 4. We're not asking for 40.
Right. I'm simply saying that by putting it in the notice of decision, we don't even have to look into the file beyond here's the sheet that's on top.
And then we also say managed with a staff of up to 2 persons at any given time. Sometimes during the day, a second staff member will be there. That's what we propose. At night, there'll be a person who doesn't actually sleep there. He's there because it's 24/7 staff. And so somebody's there at night.
That would be my recommendation to add to that would be no more than 2 staff and 1 overnight staffer.
Can I chime in?
Sure, go ahead, Tim. This discussion.
I appreciate all of the discussion, but to be honest with you, over and over in the application, it says exactly what these people are asking for. I'm looking at the Town of Northwood International Building Code 2009 statement. And under it, they say applicant and nonprofit organization proposes a step up, step down, short-term residential program for guests in the program, and very specifically says with no more than 3. Managed with a staff up to 2 persons. I don't know what more anybody could want. My complaint has always and will continue to be is that we don't down the road make sure that that's what's happened. They have specifically, it is very specific what they want, and I have no problem with that.
Correct.
But it's our job to police this down the road. And
Right.
that's where we fall short in Northwood.
Right.
Right, that's
And I
why
think-
it's about notices.
Yes. And I think James was trying to address that in the notice of decision,
Fine.
including that in a single page. My initial thought was add a note to the plan, but I prefer the notice of decision to essentially not to in any way belittle the effort of the applicant, because that's not the right word, but summarize extremely succinctly, 3 residents, 2 staffers at any time within 24 hours, 1 overnight. And that will, in a 4-bedroom residence, that would, I think, to me, words to that effect would take care of that if that was added to the notice of decision. That is on the top page of the file. If there's ever a question of site plan a violation or anything to that effect, anybody in the public that'll be the first thing they see. That'll be what the building inspector can see right there.
And I'm agreeing with that, Bob. I'm just suggesting that you take Mr. Burwood's description of proposal and use that.
Sure, fine.
Because it's right there. It's exactly what he wants. It's very specific.
Okay.
Copy and paste.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything they want to chime in on?
I have
Answer your question, Hal?
It answered that one. I have one other one.
That's fine.
There was a concern raised about the ingress, egress, whatever you want to call it, off of Route 4. Is that critical to your application, or would you consider just coming in from the other way, or do you think that's what most people will do anyway?
Well, before we answer that, let me bring up a related option in these days and age of vehicular navigation. If I plug in 162 First New Hampshire Turnpike, I'm going to hit your driveway, and I have no ability to have my navigation system bring me in on Church Street if I was a guest to visit someone for a couple hours or however, or I was an employee or something to that effect. I don't know what the process is for potentially changing your address, but it might be that some of the concerns of abutters and traffic could be addressed if you talk to the post office and see if you could get a house number on Church Street. That would then be fed into all the GIS maps, which feed into the vehicular navigation, Google Maps, et cetera, to that effect, and bring people into your parking area as one option. That is not really a land use aspect of it, but I think if that was pursued, that might alleviate some concerns.
I can address that.
Sure.
The first thing is me as a lawyer. I believe that a driveway on Route 4 is a critical piece of this property and its value. Access to a state highway is a big deal. Now, I understand that there appears to be some concern for potential traffic on Route 4 in and out of this site. I don't want to even begin to solve that problem by, and let me make the word, quote, officially, or making it as a condition of this approval, to condition the approval on closure of Route 4 access. Especially where the record is fully supportive of the minimal or zero change in use of that driveway, probably far less than if that were a ordinary residential site. For example, if I moved into that house with my wife and had 2 kids, they were both in high school and had cars, or nowadays they probably 30 years old living there and have cars. Thankfully, I don't have that issue, but that's a joke, by the way.
Yes.
There would be incredibly greater use of that driveway than we envision and propose. Now, as a practical matter, look, I did exactly what you talked about, Bob. I had no idea where this place was. Greg said, "Where is it?" I didn't know that was where it was. If you said like 2 doors before Hannaford, I would have found it. But he told me the address.
Sure.
So I plugged it in.
I bring it up.
I looked on my Google and I said, I'm not pulling in that driveway in front. I know that house. I'm going to pull in the back. And I came up from Dover. I happened to be in Dover. I shot down, got on Church Street and pulled in the back. That's where I parked. Greg showed up later. I met him at the property. So that's probably the way it's going to be as a practical matter. Not that I'm against Route 4. When I left the same way because that Route 4 access, as Mrs. McNally pointed out, is closed up. But I don't want to close the driveway. Look, I have a property, a case that as you approach a light, my client's property was within 100 feet of the stoplight, and the state closed their driveway and gave them an alternate access. They just spent $500,000 litigating that because that's how important state highway access was. Eventually, the state worked something out with them, but property rights are really important, and driveway access may not be a big deal now, but in 10 or 20 years or 30 years, when that property is sold without Route 4 access, it's a big deal. It's on the westerly side of the 202-9 light, so that means that the issues aren't there. The class of the road means that it doesn't interfere with people heading easterly on Route 4 onto the Route 9 202 left turn there. It doesn't interfere with any turn lane or anything like that in there. It's not that close.
The issue I find with it is that if I'm traveling, well, regardless, if I'm pulling into the driveway and parking, when I leave, I'm backing out onto Route 4.
There's no backing out. It's just a turn. There's a turnaround inside the driveway.
There is a turnaround inside the driveway.
Yes.
Okay.
There's an acre and a half up there.
Okay.
There's an apple orchard in the back. You can turn around back there too. I mean, there's just tons of property. It's graveled back there if you look at the plan.
Hey, Bob, it looks like somebody else wants to speak.
Yes, Mr. Well, let me do that. Mr. Jewett, you want to speak? Could you raise it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay, Bob?
Just 1 minute. Let me, I want to look up something here. I'm looking on. Okay, because let me finish with Mr. Levine first.
That's fine. Mr. Jewett makes a lot more sense than me.
Well, no, that's okay. I'm taking your word for it. I'm looking at the Google map, and I guess I do see a turnaround now. So Thank you for correcting me. Okay, that's fine. That was my concern, and with the driveway access. Any other questions from the board on driveway? Hal, did you have your statement? Did you have your answer question?
Yeah.
Question answered. Sorry, I've got it there. Okay. At this time, I will reopen public comment. Mr. Jewett would like to speak on this application. Go ahead.
I'm the owner, actually, of the property.
Okay.
I'm not a public commenter. I'm the owner of the property.
My apologies.
That's okay, no problem.
I didn't look up the name.
I really want to make just one quick comment.
Sure.
We bought the place in '98. My wife had a business there for 13 years. There was never any problem with the traffic going in and out of Route 4 or coming around on Church Street and going in the back door. She used both entrances. We had cars going in and out of there all the time. There's adequate room to turn around inside. And I even told them not to back out, to drive out, turn around and make sure they drove out. So as far as I'm concerned, and oh yeah, and when I made the application to the state for a driveway permit, because Connections couldn't do that, I had to do it because I'm the owner, property owner. They came back and said, yes, your driveways are good. You got to take out the little piece of pavement that's on the other side of the red building. But other than that, your driveways are good. No changes required.
Okay.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Questions from the board?
Yeah, Bob, this is Joe.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just regards this about the driveway, I think some good points have been made. I think keeping in mind, as the attorney, Mr. Levine, pointed out, and the whole sense of things is that this is a very low traffic situation, and the potential for it is going to be low traffic. Seems to me it's already been very clearly restricted in terms of who's going to be there and therefore who's going to be using it. I may be off, and James might correct me, or someone, perhaps you know, Bob, or just looking at a Google map. I seem to recall there is the turn lane that develops going to Hannaford. I don't know if it extends back this far.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
No. It seems to me there's added shoulder width there, aside from the lanes themselves. There is the three lane. You have the middle turn lane as you're going towards the light, so that's there. But that, I mean, that doesn't provide traffic moving west any advantage. But still, it seems to me there's pretty substantial room in terms of width there. I think the point, though, that this is very low traffic. I just don't see there being much of an issue going forward, and not changing. Now, as has already been pointed out, if there's a greater capacity requested at some point in the future, maybe that might be worth considering. I agree with the points that shifting it over to the side street there, the dead-ended street that used to be, what was it, 202?
Church Street.
Church.
Yeah. I don't see any good reason to do that other than creating just clumsiness and problems. If there was a traffic situation, I could see we're going around the side, getting access from that point to the building, and for all the residents and for anybody traveling in and out would be a good idea. In this case, I just think it's kind of pointless to even suggest requiring that. It does not make any sense. I appreciate others, I guess the butters that are saying that there might be some additional traffic, but we're talking about a very few number. As the current owner and previous occupier of a retail space there pointed out, there very likely was as much or more traffic in the past, and even that was a doable situation. I see this one as a very low use situation, and I can't see it really causing anybody, including the abutters, any problem. If there was a lot more people there and these people were a lot more mobile for reasons that have not been suggested, then maybe there would be an issue. So I'm good with the current proposal.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Bob?
Go ahead, Tim.
If we're winding down, then I just want to say that And I mean this sincerely, that I'd like personally to thank Mr. Burwood and Ms. Kendall and even Mr. Levine, although he's attorney, for what they're doing for these people. I appreciate it. It's a necessary thing, and I'm just saying thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Okay. Last opportunity to comment.
Can I say something here?
Go right ahead.
I live off of 617 First New Hampshire Turnpike. That is a highway. That is not just a little median road. And anytime you talk about access off of that road, it should be a road, not someone's driveway. I just, whenever you allow somebody's driveway to come off that highway, that is not just a regular road. That's a highway that people drive 50 to 70 miles an hour down. And that intersection by Northeast Credit Union and that complex down there, that is a very busy. I use that all the time. So my only objection is that we shouldn't have driveways off of a main highway. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you.
Got a lot of them.
We do have a lot of them. That's one of the joys of Northwood and Route 4. Okay, Betty Smith, please.
Yeah, I don't believe they're supposed to be driving 50 to 70 miles an hour in that area.
It's posted there at, I believe, there is 35.
35, yeah.
35 at the intersection, just beyond Hannaford, it goes up to 40, I believe.
However, it is a highway.
Yes. What it's posted at and what people drive at are not necessarily the same thing. Hal, go ahead.
Yeah, I only brought up the question. I wasn't hoping to stir up a lot of debate, but I was just really more trying to see if there was, if the applicant was willing to at least favor that way. And Mr. Levine, I understand what you're saying about the driveway access on Route 4. I wouldn't want to give that up either, and I wouldn't expect you to. But, you know, if there's some things that you can do as part of your business or your work, you know, in terms of directing people to, you know, that there's other options. That's really all I was trying to get at was.
No, we do that already.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's.
If you look at the site plan, we show as our proposed parking on the Church Street side of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was trying to put on. When I went there, I parked on the Church Street side.
Yeah.
And Greg met me there, and so did the plumber we brought over, and Mr. Jewett came in. We were all looking at the property, doing something, I forgot what. The realtor was there, one of our board members were there, and everybody parked on Church Street.
Yeah.
It just makes more sense. That's what we use for the front door. So as a practical matter, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And probably will continue to do. I'm sure that somebody's going to pull in when Mr. Strobel looks in his GPS. I'm sure that when he comes over to inspect the property, or the building inspector probably in a few years to make sure we only have 3 residents, well, I'm trying to be silly. We'll probably come up the 162 driveway. And if they do, we'll tell them to turn around when they leave, and next time come in Church Street. As a practical matter, Hal, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I agree with you.
It is up to the state to decide whether it's suitable or not, and that's their purview, and they've said yes. So, yeah, I'm not really trying to insist or put a condition on you, but I would like the consideration that you.
Absolutely. You got it. It'll be addressed that way.
Okay. Anyone else? I would entertain a motion for discussion then.
Close public comment.
Pardon me?
Did you close public comment?
It
was closed earlier.
It was closed earlier. I did.
But you reopened it though.
I did reopen it. I don't believe it. No, I did not close it. So at this time, we will close public comment.
Motion to approve the application under the 3 Conditions, the applicant will acquire and provide copies of necessary federal, state, and local permits, deliver 3 copies of the plan signed by the applicant to the town for signature, and the plans will be signed by the chair indicating final approval of the planning board.
Mr. Chair, point of order before a second. In my opinion, the first condition has been met, but I think it's kind of moot if it's also in the notice and they then meet it again. But I would recommend that we strike condition 1.
All right, 2 conditions, deliver 3 copies, and the plan will be signed by the chair.
Okay.
Modify second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Jandever, second by Mr. McCaffrey. Discussion on the motion to approve. Okay. I'll just add my 2 cents worth because we're in discussion that I think this location and others in Northwood show exactly the kind of difficulty we have being a historic town, in that traffic in the highway and volumes have increased. The carrying capacity of the main artery of Route 4, but there's no alternative design to shunt them away, as Mr. Curry has suggested. So we're sort of stuck, applicants are stuck, and the town is sort of stuck until DOT comes up with, discusses with us a means of better access. But in this case, I agree with the people who have spoken that for a building occupied by 3 residents and 2 staffers at most, we can deal with that. Okay, any further comment? Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Tim?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Hal?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes. Okay. You're approved. You'll see the notice of decision, and once you get your 3 copies of the plan in, I will sign it and you'll get them back. Thank you very much.
It'll be wonderful to be everyone's neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We look forward to being part of your community.
Except for Tim, who doesn't like lawyers.
My sister's a lawyer and a judge down in Pennsylvania, so I have to get in my 2 cents whenever I can.
Good move. Good move. Me too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
For your time.
And ladies. Okay.
I hate it when Bob goes quiet.
Sorry, I have too many I don't have enough monitors. I only have 2 windows or 2 screens and a whole bunch of windows open. I'm used to more. Okay, next up is Camp Yavna 21-11.
Bob, I'm recusing myself.
Yep. And I believe Ms. Baldwin is also recused. So voting designation is Strobel, Smith, Curry, and Kreider and McCaffrey. Dwayne, have you sat in on this one before?
I don't remember it, no.
Okay, I will. Because we have a quorum already, and you haven't participated in this from the beginning, I'm going to remove you from the voting designation.
I agree.
Not for any.
No, I agree.
Wrong. Just we have a quorum. We don't need an alternate. You're certainly welcome and expected to question and participate. We just don't. We won't include you on a vote. Okay. Let me pull up my other system here. because I have some notes on it. And I don't believe we did regional impact on this one either. So first, for case 21-11, I'd entertain a motion to find no regional impact on this case.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Betty Smith, second by Mr. McCaffrey. Discussion? Hearing none. Susan, could do a roll call vote, please. Assuming that's correct, James, that this is no regional impact.
That's my recollection as well, that we have not voted previously, and I concur. I don't feel there is a regional impact for the purpose of that RSA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Susan.
Hal?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, Hal,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. So we had, and gentlemen, welcome back. Sorry, TF Moran, you're gonna have to give me your name again. I'm not finding your notes.
No, that's fine, Chairman Strobel. It's Justin Masick.
Thank you. Sometimes it's as fast to ask and get a response than it is to remember. So, okay, we got some information for this over the last time. There's no regional impact. We had a chance to look at your plans. Linda did some research on it, and trying to think of what else. Yeah, go ahead, screen share.
Yeah, I can.
Why don't you bring us up to what you have?
Sure.
Or updates, or that you want to bring that you haven't presented so far.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman Strobel, members of the board. Thanks for giving us the time to present to you tonight. My name is Justin Masick. I'm from TF Moran, and I'm joined here tonight over the phone by Bill Zarch, the executive director from Camp Yavna, Russell Bassett, the facilities manager from Camp Yavna, and Corey Caldwell, a licensed land surveyor and principal at TF Moran. We presented the same project to you at last month's planning board meeting on April 29th, and the scope has remained the same. We're proposing the construction of 3 new bunkhouses, bunkhouse B12 and 13, which is a boys bunkhouse located here, bunkhouse G11, and G12 and G13, which are both girls bunkhouses, and they're located right here. I gave a somewhat brief background on the kind of the remaining project at the last planning board meeting, and I'd be happy to kind of walk through that again if the board would like, or we'd be happy to open this up to discussion and go through any comments that the board might have.
Anyone need a rehash of the last time? I'm not seeing anything, so I think we'll skip the rehash. We'll go into discussion. Questions, comments from the board? Hal?
I'd like to go over Linda's letter.
Okay. Can I touch off and present what I found with that? And you want maybe, because as a distinction, and then maybe you go into detail, because I had some analyses on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or as far as the numbers go. Okay. Linda, did you send your notes off to the applicant as well? Is Linda with? Linda's
not here tonight.
Yeah. Let me look at that. Hang on one second.
Yeah, we got it.
She did, yeah.
We saw it. We did.
Okay,
we
good.
see
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Linda Smith provided a summary of planning board applications heard over the years from, I think, about 2000 to 2021. And one of them was highlighted. excuse me, had some highlights on it. And I took that one and essentially took anytime I could find a number of campers and number of staffers, I made a note of that in the year. Unfortunately, it's on a different computer, so I don't have it to share, but she has that document and the applicants received it. So what I found is in year 2000, for one case, the number of campers was 305 and the number of staffers was 110 for a total of 415 people. Repeating that same process through that document, 2001, we were 305 and 126 for a total of 431. 2004, we were 317, 126 for 443 total. 2005, we were 335 and 110 for 445 people. And in 2005, there were 335 campers, 125 staffers for a total of 460. That in that difference in the between 2000 and 2005 applications, the total percentage change of staffers was 11%, or of persons on site was 11%, from a start of 415 to year 2000 to 460 in 2005. The next, following that, the next case where numbers were mentioned was 2021, and the numbers of campers was 375 and 175 campers or staffers at a total of 550. If we do the same percentage increase, that's a total increase of 33% from 2000 to 2021. And just wanted to give you that. That's my summary of what I found from the information that Linda provided. Hal, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so I wrote a note back to Linda that said, thanks, I want to give you a heads up that I have concerns about the capacity numbers, and we'll bring that topic up at the next meeting. My interpretation of the town approved 305 campers and 110 staff. The latter was then perhaps increased by 12. Just for reference, all the other approvals stated no changes in number of capacity. I see no further increases approved. I do see where additional bunk capacity was added, but those approvals were all with the caveat that there was no increase in the total people on site at any one time. Later in the record, it appears that the applicant incorrectly states that a much higher total capacity increased apparently based on additional bunk capacity that was approved. Am I missing something? Linda writes back, that's my understanding of the numbers as well.
Okay.
I guess that's part of, I'm not bringing this up per se to, give people a hard time, but we need to be clear with the public and fair to the public about them knowing about what's changing, what's approved and stuff. And if we don't give them a chance to comment and speak to that, I think we're being remiss. So that's my concern. I'll be blunt, I don't know how to address it.
Okay.
Bill or Russ, do you guys have any comments to the capacity on site over the years?
I could.
Russ, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You could start, Bill. Go ahead.
So, I'm in my 5th year we've been, I inherited the numbers of campers from my year to the year that has been here has not changed. So that's what I inherited. And there has not been an increase. My predecessor didn't say to me, oh, by the way, you're only at 305 campers. Because if you look at I have the historical numbers of how many campers were at camp. We haven't been at 305 in a really long time. So, and camp is now, camp is, thank God, a couple of weeks away, and we've enrolled, kids. So, it is when Linda sent this to me, this was total news to me. And Justin, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think our point, I believe on what you're seeing, that number that we've shown was on the first plans that you guys approved, when we did the infirmary and the new boys bunk. Our goal, the reason that we're asking for these additional bunks is because we want to spread the kids out. The board has been very clear with me. The board of Camp Yavne has been very clear that this is our number. We're not at 375 campers either session. We're at 350 campers each session, and that's been the number that has been for a while. So, we of course want to be great neighbors. We want to be as transparent as we possibly can be. I don't really know how this kind of happened. I just kind of went along and said, oh, this all sounds great. I don't know if Russ, you want to jump in and say anything else.
I think the only thing I want to say is that we want to be transparent. These numbers of campers that we have are based on the capacity of our leach field system. So many gallons per person, per day, per cabin. All this has been figured out by the engineers. We try and meet all the legal building code specifications and everything that we do. We are currently building new bunks and adding sprinkler systems, even though they may not be required, but because we only want to have 12 kids and it's only per bunk. And if we have over that, it would be required, but we said we're going to do it anyways because we want to increase safety of our campers. We've been very upfront hiring professional engineers to oversee all the septic design plans, sewage plans, stormwater plans. Obviously, plans to build on steep slopes require special permitting. Special permitting required for, waterfront. We've jumped through all those hoops, and we're trying to be as forthcoming as possible. We're stating, so you don't have to look through records or whatever. We're stating right on the plan. It's in writing on the plans that have been submitted what our capacity is. So we're really just trying to be as much upfront with everyone as possible. And I think myself, when I was looking back for the previous meeting, when I was looking through capacities, I didn't read all the notes of the meetings, but I saw that, okay, we've added new bunks with 30 people in the past and 20 and whatever. And I thought that probably exceeded what we were putting on our plans, but I did not realize that they stated that there was no increase in people, because I did not read the minutes actually. But so I think our goal is not to increase for those reasons.
And P.S. by the way, we don't have just so you know, these three buildings that are being proposed, we don't have a timeline as to when these three buildings are being proposed. I would be happy to take any donations at the town of Northwood. We are happy to name any building after anybody for those three buildings that are being proposed. So I just wanted to give you that heads up. This is not like a rush job. We actually are coming to you so that we can be a little more planful for the future.
Bob, question.
Go ahead, Joe.
For the applicant that just spoke, and what just generally, a couple of little questions, really. So as you just referred, these buildings are not necessarily going to be built in the very near future. I mean, you're proposing these as a near-term project, but they might be delayed for a year or two. Just a perspective. It doesn't. I actually don't care ultimately, but I'd like to know that since you referred to it, that time frame, and then a follow-up question.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that we would do one or two of these projects starting in the fall, and then the fall of 22, we would be looking at another one of these projects.
Okay, separate question.
Sure.
So the engineering that's been presented for leach field, septic design, and everything that accompanies that, what capacity does that have in terms of total number of people, both staff and campers?
I can take that one, Bill. So I can pull up a different plan here that kind of shows the displacement of campers that Camp Yavna is thinking of implementing once these are constructed. So currently on site, and Bill, feel free to step in and correct me anywhere throughout here, but this building right here, B2, is an existing boys bunkhouse. And up here we have another existing, this is actually a dual girls bunkhouse. I believe it's G1 and G2. So please disregard that call out. But essentially these two bunkhouses will be converted into classroom space following the construction of the proposed bunkhouses in blue. And this diagram gives an idea for how campers will be displaced from existing buildings that currently hold capacity into the proposed locations, kind of shifting the capacity on the septic and utilities. We're currently in coordination with the State Subsurface Bureau. We're looking into getting approvals for actually amending existing leach fields on site. And so that's one of the conditions of approval that the town planner provided us prior to the previous planning board meeting. And as soon as we get those approvals, we'll be certain to provide the town with those to make sure that, you know, we're not overloading any one leach field on site.
Well, I see things are dispersed in terms of leach fields and so forth, but I'm wondering what is that, just give me an aggregate total number of what is the capacity of all of the sanitary leach field facilities on the site. I mean, 300, 400, 500, obviously I'm sure you've already engineered this for the numbers that you've been talking about, but what is that capacity in terms of a total number? Do you have that?
I don't have that number in front of me at the moment. As there's about 9 leach fields throughout the site, and we do have information on all of those, and I can definitely pull that together and provide a cumulative capacity that shows that it is not being inundated at any time.
Well, see, it's making sense to me that, I mean, you're upgrading not only the facilities, the bunkhouses and so forth themselves, but as you've stated, you're not increasing numbers in these bunkhouses. As I understand it, if anything, you're reducing numbers, if I got it right, in some of the bunkhouses where, let's say there were 16 before, and this one now there's 8 and 8. I'm just making that up, but the point is there that you seem to be maintaining the numbers, aggregately. So I'm just trying to get a picture as it seems. I'm going by the engineering statements that these leach fields and so forth are not only adequate, they're improvements on what exists. And that being the case, that's a good thing as far as I can see. I'm just wondering where that total number is. There seems to be, we're talking about numbers of total campers here, plus personnel, and I'm getting a sense that you're increasing facilities, which is the sanitary facilities, and that's a good thing. That seems to be greater than the number you are currently saying that's going to occupy this, and you seem to now be saying that that's the future top number. We're talking in the 350 range, if I understood correctly. That didn't quite speak to the personnel, but the last number I heard on that was up around 175. Maybe you could.
Joe, it's the 550 is capacity is 300, according to what planning board minutes, it's 375 campers and 175 staff.
And that was our last discussion on that. Is that correct?
Correct. That was from 2021 days.
Okay. So I'm just trying to put that together. The numbers, okay, according to some of our historical research here, the number has increased. I think for whatever reasons, benignly, it's just the camp's done better, or there's been an intention to make it a nicer, larger facility. Is the infrastructure as proposed seems to be adequate according to the engineering that we're getting. Are we looking to, and I'm not asking the applicant this, are we asking James and whoever, are we looking to put a top number on this right now? Let's say the facility can handle, instead of 550, let's say it can handle 650, 700, as it's now being engineered. Are we saying we don't want it to go there, we want to keep it at 550? Or are we worried that it creeped up over several years? I'm not worried about that as long as the facilities have remained adequate all along.
So, Joe, I think what we are, to put this in a little bit of context, what we would like to be able to do is, with all of our approvals, have sufficient details recorded in the decision so that we know when applicants are complying with the approved site plan and at what point they would have exceeded what was considered and approved by the board, and potentially need to come back for additional permissions.
Well, that's good, James. Then that's all my last part of that was to say, yeah, I'd like to hear a number. If we're at this 550 thereabouts, then, fine. It appears to me, if the facilities are greater than that and they want to take advantage of them in the future, I'm also good with the idea that they come back and ask for that increase. But
yeah. So Joe, I think what we would consider that both a where development has occurred item. So because they are proposing new structures in new places, that's what kicked this into site plan review. I think the importance of the number is an intensity of development question, because the board, as part of your site plan review, are tasked with, as you say, are the other sources of infrastructure, the septic, the driveway, are they adequate for the scale of use that is being proposed? So, as far as we have clear records that Linda had through 2005, and then it's at some point between 2005 and the numbers in 2021, where that increase occurred. And Hal had sort of asked the question, what do we do now? You absolutely have the authority to approve a number tonight, whether that number is the 550 that the applicant is representing or whether it's something else. I think what I would, if you would take a little bit of advice from me, what I would focus on is there any additional, assume for the sake of argument that we had no prior numbers and they were coming in tonight with no history and said, we are proposing to have 550 people on this site. What additional information do you need to make a determination about that capacity? Do you need additional information about the driveway? Do you need additional information about the septic? Or are you satisfied with the information that has been provided that yes, this site can handle 550 people, in which case you can feel free to approve. Mr. Masek has already indicated that there will be some septic approvals from the state required. So I would suggest that in addition to the condition of approval, where we would normally require that permit to be delivered to the town, that we take Mr. Masek up on his offer to compile all of the septic information into one location for total capacity. So we would have one report from the applicant stating here are our collective septic approvals with the load for all of those. I think, as with many of the other cases that we've discussed tonight, if the board would be satisfied with that approach for documentation that the septic system is adequate, the only other question that I would have for you is, whether the driveway and circulation system is adequate for that number. That again is something that we, for items like that, that's something that we typically ask of DOT if it's a state road and the road agent if it's a town road to either give
I
us
don't
feedback.
Sorry, I don't understand. Almost half the kids don't come in with their parents. I don't even, why?
I was going to point that out is that, from the perspective of a driveway and parking, the majority of the time, the residents, the 375 will not be in the vehicle. The circulation patterns, though, come into play when on drop off and pickup and when the camp is rented out. And that might be another topic to bring up in just a little bit later.
So let me reiterate,
Okay.
If you are satisfied with the current provided driveway, circulation, etc., those are, in my mind, the two infrastructure systems that are most likely to be overloaded. Everything else that we have discussed, the applicant has discussed stormwater as it relates to the proposed additional buildings. And to that end, they have requested a waiver for some of the formal submissions, and I don't want to lose track of the fact that I don't believe we have rendered a decision on that. So, to Hal's decision of or question of what's next, if you are satisfied with those two systems, then I would say that you absolutely have the authority to approve a capacity of 550 people tonight. If you are not satisfied with those systems, please indicate what information you would need to see to be satisfied.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And Hal, does that sort of answer your question?
Well, it doesn't. what I'm concerned about with is the public saying you approved 400, you installed additional bunks, but stated they weren't going to increase capacity. They did. They're now planning on installing more bunks, stating there's no increase in capacity. And I'm not even sure people are aware. If you read through the record, there's comments about, we're concerned about this, we're concerned about that relate to capacity. So without the public knowing for sure what we're even working on and getting their input, I'm not sure I know everything I need to know about this application.
So Hal, I understand that there are questions about what happened between 2005 and 2021. And I understand that for purpose of clarity and transparency, things could certainly have been done better between 2005 and 2021. But for the purpose of the application you have before you, that 2005 to 2021 is a difference of 90 campers. For what you have before you, it is not important to know when that capacity increased by 20 or increased by 30 or increased by 45. All that you need to know and assess for this application is, are you satisfied with the information provided that the proposed site plan is adequate to service 550 campers?
So we don't need to weigh public consideration then, James?
If there are people who are here to testify tonight as to site capacity, you need to consider the testimony that they give you. But if you, it is not your job to consider whether there was an approval that was given in 2007 that somebody may have wished to speak about and did not. That is not something that we can go back in time and rectify at this point. You have an application that is stating on the record that they are proposing to have 550 people on site. And I understand there may be some differences of opinion about when exactly that change happened or who inherited what. I understand from Mr. Zarch that as far as he's concerned, those applications that said we're not changing capacity are perfectly truthful because he understood that was what the understood capacity was. We can't go back and we can't fix that misunderstanding. And I don't think it serves anybody to even figure out exactly whose side any given part of that misunderstanding was. We have on the record a number now. We have on the record a number that we can use going forward. So for this application, it is this board's responsibility to take the testimony that is provided as part of these proceedings and consider whether the site plan as proposed is adequate and meets code.
Did Justin leave?
I don't think so.
I don't see him.
I don't see him on
I
the
don't see him.
Zoom.
Did he get disconnected?
Just came back.
Oh, there he is.
Coming back. He's reconnected. I think he just missed probably hit the wrong button when he stopped sharing his screen, which is fine.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Apologies for that. My
That's okay.
Zoom had frozen on me there.
That's okay. It happens. I think if I could summarize Hal's point share it, but I also share James's statement of, based on what we have been presented with tonight, the concern over approving tonight, if we do so, if the board does so, is that we move the bar on the number of the capacity of the camp.
Right.
Is that, we're moving from what may or started off at 415 total persons to 550 total persons. The capacity of the systems might work. I'm speaking just for myself. Would like to see the total septic capacity on file, so that we have a upper limit on that, the total septic capacity of the camp, let alone the number of bunks. We have the, Mr. Sarch's and Mr. Bassett's statements of the capacity of the number of bunks there on the public record. My suspicion is that the number of bunks will be less than the number of persons designed into the septic, which is as it should be. I'm still trying to wrap my brain though around whether we want to essentially move the capacity by approving it or not. That is something I'm still struggling with, regardless of how it happened and when and those things.
May I interject, Chairman Strobel?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen.
Sure. Go ahead.
Can everyone see the site plan on the screen right now?
Coming up.
It says that my screen sharing is paused. I'm not sure if, okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. This plan set is what was approved back on February 11th for the construction of bunkhouse B11 and the addition to the Mark Infirmary building.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the comments from the board was that we were to show the capacity table on this plan.
Right.
And we added that. And then in our second planning board meeting, we presented that. And it's remained the same between that planning board meeting and this new project. And I understand that after Linda very nicely compiled all the meeting minutes over the last 20 years or so, that we're seeing a discrepancy. And my analysis was that the number had changed over time, and it fluctuated both up and down. And at the time that we were asked to add this note to our plan, we were working off of what the camp believed was the maximum capacity. It wasn't necessarily what was currently on site or what was in the future to be proposed, but it was, to their knowledge, what the camp could be at. And I don't think we had the idea that we do now after seeing all the meeting minutes stacked up over the last 20 years. So that 550 was really placed on the plan as what we believed was, the approximate max capacity. And then it was presented to the board and everyone was able to see it. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate that as the background on where that number is coming from and, how it hasn't changed since the previously approved plan.
Right.
But, to that point, we'll definitely, be happy to try to provide justification to those numbers and to show that, the septic and the utilities on site have the capacity to handle that max number. I just felt the need that everyone should hear at least where that number was coming from and how we kind of have a better idea on everything now that we've seen all the meeting minutes.
Yeah. Well, that,
and if I can interject for a second about the 2018 minutes, because I'm looking at because the last time that we were here,
yep.
I think we just assumed because because the camp enrollment was a certain number in 2017 and a certain number in 2016. My first season was 17. The camp enrollment was a certain amount in 2016. that we were just going along on the same trajectory that it had always been. So, you know, it was all news to me when I saw Linda's notes. This was all news. I hope you know, we want to be partners with you, and we value the relationship that we have with you. I think this is just a mistake that has kind of just built up over time.
I don't think anyone, and I hope I'm speaking for the board. I can't imagine I wouldn't be. I don't think anyone's here to assign blame or fault or maliciousness or, you know, I think it's just, as you said, it's 20 years. I know that if I looked at my day job, the multiple people who have handled that, the numbers will vary from year to year. The concern, and I think Mr. Masick did a great service of forestalling argument. We approved the prior plan with 550 on it. So that sort of negates any argument of fact finding prior to that. At least in my opinion of that, because you're following your statement of between 2018 or whatever it was, and now your capacity is not increasing beyond from 550 to 550. The concern was, as we stated, you know, in the past, but because we moved the table or the goalpost, however you want to call it, the marker at the prior approval, that's all moot point. My opinion, that is.
Say,
I mean,
Bob,
it would be a stretch, I think, for, no, I won't even mention that. Don't even worry about it. Go ahead, Joe, you had a question or comment.
Well, I kind of agree with the point you just made. If I understand this, not to belabor this much further, but this earlier number going back to what, 2000 or thereabouts, whatever it was, 415 total. I'm not clear, but maybe it was. That number was approved as a real number back then.
It was
a top number.
It was.
Was it okay? It was approved as a max number.
Well, it was approved as
the current number at that time.
Let me pull it up.
I'm making a little.
Was
I'm making a little.
100, 305 and 110.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the number itself, but I'm getting it. It's 415.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, was that? See, I don't know what the language was. Was it saying as much as this?
That was represented on the record as the understood capacity of the camp at that time.
At that time, but that capacity at that time and all that it should be. I mean, I don't know how that was phrased. That's all. I don't want to make.
I mean, you had Bob read out 4 different approvals over the next 5 years after that. So in 2000, the 415 was the understood capacity of the camp at that time. A year later, the understood capacity of the camp at that time increased by 16 people.
Correct.
Okay.
Stated on the record.
Okay. So what I'm getting, James, what I'm getting
here is that we seem to have stopped recording that number at some point.
Okay. But what I'm getting at is, I don't know the considerations back then. I didn't have anything to do with the planning board then. So I'm observing that this number not only increased, perhaps because infrastructure was being bettered at those points, or just because, or perhaps it was already adequate and the number of campers who were growing. Whatever the scenario, it obviously increased, and the boards at that time went along with it. And so we get up to the current time, and I agree with Bob's point that we're faced with, we've we looked at a year ago, whatever, the last time around, and we went along with the numbers that were presented to us based on infrastructure that was also presented to us. So I think we're faced with the fact that it's a fait accompli. And furthermore, the infrastructure from all the testimony I'm getting and what I see, though I can't interpret the engineering on this, and I don't think anybody else on the board can just prima facie, but I'm just saying it seems more than adequate for what's being proposed. And then my question earlier about what is the total possible number that this current infrastructure, as we see on these plans, might be able to accommodate, I was more of an interest in learning whether it was well over capacity, which it may be, or it may be just at capacity at the current proposal of 550. Either way, seems like we're good on that. And if the number later is going to be increased, since we've had this discussion, and since we're kind of spelling it out, it seems at this point, that if they want to come back for 650, 750, whatever, and if the capacity is there, then the board at that time can approve it or ask for better infrastructure. It seems to me that's where we are. I'm going along with what Bob just iterated, and I'd like to move forward on this.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the board?
Bob?
Yes, go ahead, Betty.
2 questions, short and to the point. Does the septic have capacity to handle this number of students?
Mr. Masick, I think you had proposed to determine that in total, if I understand your statement earlier, correct?
Yeah, really, we're working with the state right now to receive approvals by shifting or displacing campers from, an existing bunkhouse to a proposed. You take away capacity at one location and then you shift it towards another. So we're working on an analysis and working with the state to show that we're not going to overcapacitate any given leach field on the site. Because there's 9 leach fields, you have different bunkhouses and different infrastructure that tie into each leach field. So, by receiving state approval, they won't approve anything that is under capacity. So once those are received, and we will provide them to the town, that will show that all the leach fields on site, in fact, do have the capacity for the displaced campers.
Okay.
So
the
just to make sure that I understand, what you're saying is there has been on site sufficient capacity for 550 people?
Well, I can answer that one. That's one of our requirements.
No.
They won't get state septic approval if they can't.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
I'm looking at the old plan.
Oh.
The old plan said 550 people on site. Septic have 550 people capacity.
Can I interject?
Sure, go ahead.
So that is correct, that the current system can handle that amount of people. But when we move a bunk, let's say G1 and 2, for example, is in system A, and we move 30 people from system A to system B, then we may overload system B. Therefore, we have to shift where the septic from the new building goes. Rather than go into B, it may have to go back to A. So we're just shifting where the load is, and we want to make sure we don't overload any one leach field, because there's so many different buildings tied into so many different leach fields. The capacity is there now, but if we, like I said, we're going to reduce it in one, and we may overload it in another if we move them. So that's why we have to, probably what is going to end up happening is we may pump sewage from a new bunk into where it used to be, so we don't change capacity. Are you following with me okay on that?
I am.
understand the concept completely.
I guess I didn't follow your question, Hal, initially.
I can step into, I'm not sure if my screen's still sharing or not.
It is.
And you guys can see the plan that shows the arrows with the red and blue bunks.
No, you're on the steep slopes.
So for instance,
there you go.
So right now B2 is a bunkhouse. So that has, showers, sinks, and it has a certain capacity. Once that's converted to a classroom space, that capacity lowers. Now there's only probably going to be a bathroom and a sink in that entire building. Then the campers that were currently in there are going to be displaced over to this new location. So then you have to look at where the flows in what was B2 were contributing to which leach field. And we're going to have to make sure we're tying B12 and 13 up into that same leach field. And in this instance, it's not color coded, so it's a little difficult to see, but I do believe that it ties into leach field 3. But essentially we would have to connect to an existing system. And that's what we're working with through the state right now, to show that our proposed system won't inundate any existing system. So we're actually going to be amending existing leach field approvals. And we already received one for B11 down here. We received operational approval and construction approval from the state, as well as pre-approval from the town of Northwood, to tie into an existing system. And we're essentially copying that same process, but it's a little bit more of an analysis this time around, just due to where campers are being displaced from. And in most cases, they're further away than what we dealt with B11. So once we receive those approvals, we'll be able to show exactly where new flows are going, and that all the existing systems do in fact have the capacity for those flows.
Okay.
Does that help answer your question?
I'm going to be real specific. So maybe fait accompli, there's 550 folks coming in. It sounds like things are going to be shifting and changing. Is the number of people in the specific bunks going to change after we approve this plan?
Is in the total number or individual, you're talking in individual buildings, or you're talking total numbers?
I'm talking both, because what he just said was, if we move people from one bunk to another, we may overload the septic. And so I guess what I'm really asking is, we're fixing it. It sounds like, again, fait accompli at 550. They're talking about moving people around, which means moving the septic system around. I don't want to run into the same problem where, oh, well, we moved them to a newer bunk, this, that, or the other, and not know that that's septic. So I guess what I'm asking is, are we going to fix, when we approve this plan, the number of people in each bunkhouse? Because otherwise, I don't know how you get the septic system to work.
Well, that's the septic designer's perspective. And our only ability and requirement is that they have a state-approved septic design. If bunkhouse, and I'm just going to pull numbers here, Al, if you're saying our approval was going to limit, you want our approval to limit, B13, 12 and 13 to, 24 people, so it doesn't overload leach field number 6, that's not, to me, that's not a town responsibility, nor is it something we want to do. I mean, we have the requirement that their septic, that based on the 550 people, has to meet state approval, period, or else they're out of site plan approval
On an ongoing basis.
on an ongoing basis. If it's
Okay,
their
so-
requirement that, Leach Field 6 can handle the flow capacity from, G11, G12, G13, fine. If it can't, then Mr. Masic's already stated that we're going to amend their DES's approval to make sure that it does meet septic flow.
In explaining the idea that you would need a new approval, it comes off as that you would think that there's an increase in capacity, but really it's just the shift. I guess to try to more clearly state it, say we were to try to tie B12 and 13 into Leach Field 9, which is where this general cluster of bunkhouses currently discharges to, we would overload that system because now we're adding in this many campers. So really you have to trace back to where you're displacing campers from by changing everything from B2 over to B12 and 13. You have to trace back to the leach field that it came from. And so it requires state approval and it requires an analysis, but it doesn't indicate that you're increasing the actual number of campers. It's just you're displacing campers and you're changing the load on a particular leach field. And so we're working with the state to obtain those approvals.
Right.
So
Now, I would be
a different way. When you change how many people are in a bunkhouse, are you then required to go back to the state and certify your septic system?
If you were to increase the capacity of an existing bunkhouse, then yes, you'd have to show that your septic.
How you move people from one bunkhouse to another bunkhouse, and it could theoretically overload the septic system where you're moving them to. Does that move require you to go back to the state and say, we're moving these folks, therefore please reapprove our septic system?
No, that's not what they're doing, Hal. They're physically, and Mr. Masick, certainly, let me try to reiterate what you have stated. I understand it. They're physically moving people from B2 to B12.
We're actually taking, wait, hold on. We're actually taking B2 and they're going to be split between B12 and B13.
Okay,
so
sorry.
there are 24 boys in B2 right now.
Yep.
They're going to be 12 boys in B12 and 12 boys in B13.
Okay. Thank you. I just forgot to add the B13 to it. So you're physically moving 24 people from B2 to B12 and B13, but
Right.
the septic for B12 and B13 is going to be routed back to, I'm just going to say it, B12 and then onto this leach field. So there's
Correct.
no change ultimately in the septic flow to the leach field that services now B2. Is that correct statement? You're essentially moving people, but you're not moving their septic.
But it still requires state approval.
Correct.
So Hal, where we would go from here, the state approved septic that they are pursuing right now will be a permit from the state saying they have approved the septic configuration to support this plan. If they go ahead and they build this plan out, they do the switches like they say they're going to do, and they reach a point where they have all of these bunkhouses built, they're hooked up to the correct septic systems, and then they propose to build another bunkhouse, whether it's a new bunkhouse to increase the load or the capacity from 550 campers to more than that, or whether it's to take some of those 550 campers from any one of the bunkhouses that are in service at that point and build another new bunkhouse and move them someplace else. Either of those changes, the reallocation or the increase, would require a new state-approved septic at that time. And that state-approved septic would correspond to the new plan.
Okay, so I'm almost there. So what you just described, James, does that include a description of how many people are in each bunkhouse?
The septic plan itself should include that discussion of where those loads are going. So if they...
I was hoping for more of a yes or no, James, instead of a should.
Well, it's not going to be in a nice, neat, chart and box on page 1 where you're consulting and saying, all right, here's the bed count. But yes, those calculations have to be in there to be able to come up with what is the load that's being produced by this bunkhouse.
Okay, so what you're saying is if those will all be listed in the state approved septic system design, and if something changes, we'll be able to go back and look at that. Correct?
And the only ways that would change would be, we have an intent to move them someplace else. Either we're putting them into a bunkhouse that's existing, but those are going to have, building code concerns that I would presume that the building inspector, code enforcement officer would need to be involved with. We're adding beds in here because of standard building code issues, or we're building a brand new building. So we would be capturing those as part of our normal compliance and building permit and site plan approval processes.
Can I add something also?
Sure, go ahead.
Annually, the fire department comes and inspects every single building. We take probably a couple hours. We go through every single building. We check all the smoke detectors, fire alarm systems, fire extinguishers, exits, and everything. So these buildings are regularly inspected.
Yeah, I'm concerned that we didn't really advertise this as a change and are doing it as a fait accompli. And I'm just worried about it perpetuating in the future. So, for example, the boys moved to 12 and 13, 2's still open. Now we add some boys and back into 12, and we've added another 20 to the capacity. That's really what worries me.
But that's not what we're proposing. And the board of Camp Yavna has also made it very clear that that's not going to happen. So I don't want to even, I want it to be on the record that the board does not want to grow past the number that's on this plan. And so I don't even want that to be in the conversation, because that is not the plan. If you've been to B2, I don't know if you've ever been to B2, it's one of the original bunks. It's getting pretty past its prime. The same thing with what is marked as B12, B13, which is a girls' bunk. It's getting past its prime. We're going to use it as programming space because we need it as programming space, and will be less wear and tear. But the board has been really clear. It does not want to get any bigger than it is right now. Now, I can't, they could say in 10 years, maybe, hey, we want to do that. But then they know they have to come back and have a conversation.
Right. And your statement is appreciated. And that's been, it's been on the public record. It's been in your application for the last couple times. I won't call it the current problem because I'm accepting it as a fait accompli. The issue is, Mr. Zarch, before your time, your board has stated, or the applications have stated, we don't want an increase in the number of campers, yet it's gone up over 33% over 20 years. So, and again, I'll go back. I'm not finding fault. I'm not pointing fault. I'm not intending, even implying, maliciousness, anything to that effect. I appreciate the fact that you have stated that for now you want 0 increase in campers and that you will abide by that.
The other thing is, again, we're not at 375 either session. So I want to make sure everybody, again, that is on the record that we are not at 375.
Okay, good to know. Okay. Where's the board at? Other discussion, points, questions, comments? James has pointed out that, our intent tonight is to decide whether we have enough information to act on unless there is more. And if there is not, what information do you need?
Well, I'll say, Bob.
Go ahead.
I think we have more than enough information. We've explored this.
Why don't I cut you off? You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Point of
Yeah.
order, I don't believe we've acted on the waiver request yet.
No,
All right.
no, we have not.
If-
Okay.
Depending on which motion you were looking for.
Yeah.
I have no objection to approving the waiver request.
Okay.
As the applicant has previously stated, the stormwater flow,
Thank
while the addition of impervious roof area is likely to cause heavier pooling in the immediate vicinity of the building. When you're talking about an overall site this large, I think I would concur with the conclusion that stormwater impact is going to dissipate and return to exactly the same amount that it had been relatively quickly. The applicant has also pointed out that the buildings will be supported by pylons, but not on full foundations. So there will even be seepage capacity underneath that impervious roof area.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the waiver request. just
Second.
stated.
Okay. So motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Ms. Betty Smith to approve the waiver for section 9-D stormwater drainage.
And as far as discussion, Bob, if I might, I mean, that the site is a very pervious site. There's very little pavement in that entire area. And the changes that are proposed, as already stated, have very little effect, if anything, might even improve just water, ground absorption, and so forth. Anybody that's been over there would know that. We're talking about virtually no pavement anywhere. And the buildings, as you or somebody just stated, I think you did, Bob, or whoever, on pylons and so forth, means that even the surface underneath will absorb water. So I think, perfectly good waiver request.
Okay.
Move the question.
Further discussion on the waiver request approval. Hearing none, Susan can do a roll call vote, please.
Joe,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Thank you, James, for jumping in. I mistakenly closed my note page for that before looking at it. I couldn't find it before I spoke. Okay.
Well, now a motion to approve 2111.
Okay.
Would you like me to read the conditions that are proposed?
With conditions, yes, absolutely. Thank you, James.
The one change to the plan set that I noted, I believe it was the 150-foot shoreland buffer area. I think that was incorrectly labeled as either the 50 or the 250. So condition 1, make the following changes to the plan set, just ensure that all the shoreline buffer labels are correct. Number 2, the applicant will acquire and provide copies of all necessary federal, state, and local permits, including but not limited to a special exception from the Northwood ZBA for impacts of the steep slopes overlay. I believe that has already been acquired and noted on the cover sheet. And an NHDES shoreline permit. I believe that's already been acquired and noted on the cover sheet and provided to the town. And an NHDES septic permit. So having reviewed those, I would cut that down to including but not limited to an NHDES septic permit. Number 3, deliver 3 copies of the plan signed by the applicant, signed and stamped by the applicant to the town for signature. And then prior to the issuance of the building permit, number 4, the plan shall be signed by the chair indicating final approval of the planning board.
I'm glad I didn't have to cite those. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Okay. Discussion on the motion for approval with conditions.
Was there a second?
Second.
Didn't you make the motion? No.
I made the
Joe
motion.
Joe made the motion, Betty second. Okay, sorry. Hearing none. Susan, can do a roll call vote, please.
Oh, Bob, I have discussion.
Oh, you do? I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up.
I had raised it earlier, then I put it down, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
So getting all the discussion, where will the camp capacity be prominently noted as part of this decision?
The capacity is currently noted in a note on the plan sheet, but if you would like to do a similar thing to the last case and note the approved capacity in the notice of decision, I'm happy to do so.
How about if we put it on the sign on the way in?
I think the adding it to the notice of decision is a good plan. Having it in 2 spaces would be appreciated, because my suspicion is that the building inspector would look at the 8.5 by 11 sheet first before going into the plan set. Does that answer your question, Hal?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to give people a hard time, but the public asks, and when they don't see a consistent process or there's problems, they get upset, and we have to handle those calls. So anything we can do to make it more streamlined, to make it more clear, to make it easier for ongoing operations, I think we need to do it.
Well, I think between now that we have a established 550 and an intent from, or statement from the Yavna board to not increase that, that's on the public record as well. So, and I think now that we have seen what happens over 20 years through, let's call it, lack of attention on the board's part, we'll be a little bit more careful the next time Yavna comes around to make sure that they call that into question if that is not the case. So, discussion, further discussion? Susan, can do a roll call vote, please.
Betty,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay. Happy construction season.
Thank you very much, and we will be back, and we will also note it. It will be noted in. We have a board meeting next week. I will make sure that it is in our minutes as well as the desire of the. We will make sure the 375 and 175 is noted, so that someday when I'm not here, Russ is not here, it has been. Everybody knows what the story is. So we appreciate your. And it's just. It makes it clear for everybody. I understand where you're coming from, and this will make it crystal clear to everybody.
Well, the difficulty comes in is that, each of us are on a 3-year term that all rotates. So we have change in staff, change in town staff, change in board members. And over 20 years, it's probably not been the same set of eyes to see the whole process. So, like I said, no one is looking, I'm not looking certainly to cast blame on either Cap Yavna as trying to pull the wool over our eyes or ignorance on the board's plan. I think it just occurred, and it's distasteful to us to have caught ourselves in that case. So, but we'll move forward.
All right. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Have a great evening. Thanks.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman Strobel, members of the board. Appreciate your guys' time and consideration.
Thank you for your time too.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have on the agenda KRJ Finance, but I believe they withdrew their application.
That is correct. I received a notice from Mr. Barry, who is the surveyor for the project, and I forwarded that to the board. So that application is withdrawn. No further discussion, yeah, unless they were to file a subsequent application and renotice.
Okay. And I don't think we have anything else to bring up for internal business.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
we have a second.
Second.
Actually, and noted that Mr. Janiber and Ms. Baldwin are rejoining us,
And Dwayne.
and Dwayne. Mr. Curry, sorry, I should be consistent. Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, Joe. Oh, Mr. Curry seconded. Well, I will forestall it. Anybody who votes no, I'm going to cut you off on the meeting.
I'm just gonna shut the meeting off anyway, so.
Shut the meeting off. Okay, so I will say we are adjourned at 8:55. Thank you all. We'll see you on the 27th.
Yes.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
And all.